The Lost Property Office by James R. Hannibal, Chapter 6. "Any of you see a kid in a green shirt?" Jack heard the tube cop puffing behind him. He turned left along the platform, looking for a place to hide. All he found was an alcove barely a foot deep. The gray door inside was labeled "Danger, High Voltage," and secured with a padlock. Jack pressed himself up against it, turning his head to make sure his nose didn't stick out. His eyes fell on another teenage boy with spiked blue hair, wearing red skinny jeans and a black leather jacket with studs all over it. The boy was staring right at him. Jack gave him a pleading look. The kid snorted and turned to face the tracks. 30 more seconds passed with Jack trying to look as casual as possible while pressed against the high-voltage door. Another train rolled into the station, and the same voice he had heard while trapped in the hotel's revolving doors said, "Mind the gap, please." Spiky-haired kid sauntered on board. Jack had no choice but to follow. Sadie was somewhere down the line. Once on the train, Jack shrank into the nook at the front end of the car, trying to stay out of sight. Spiky-haired kid gave him a smirk, but he positioned himself between Jack and the window, blocking the sight line of the tube cop on the platform. Jack offered a grateful nod. Spiky-haired kid snorted. After that, the two boys did their best not to make eye contact. The train was mercifully quiet. No more street noises. The passengers played with their phones instead of talking on them. Unfortunately, the enclosed environment brought with it a new threat to Jack's senses. On the street above, the cold and westerly breeze had removed the smell of the pedestrians, leaving only the sooty gray smell of any street in any big city. Here, in the warm, stagnant air of the train car, Jack could smell them all. Spiky-haired kid hadn't bathed in a while and had one arm raised to hold onto the rail. He had clearly tried to cover his personal musk with cologne, but succeeded only in creating a sort of fruity leather onion motif. And smelly, spiky-haired kid's musk wasn't the worst part. An oozing, oily scent of digested fish hung in the air like a red haze. Jack guessed that at least half the people on the train had eaten herring for breakfast, and no one had brushed afterwards. He scanned their faces. No one else seemed to notice. What was wrong with these people? The train slowed, and Jack bent down to look out the curved window, searching the platform for any sign of his sister or the man in the brown bowler. He didn't see either one. He didn't see any tube cops either. It seemed the men in the red, high-visibility coats weren't exactly Scotland Yard. "This is Marylebone Station," said the revolving door tube voice. "Mind the gap, please." Jack considered getting out, but he hadn't seen Sadie or even the man in the bowler hat. Smelly, spiky hair kid raised one blue eyebrow. Jack shook his head. "This train is leaving the station." Smelly, spiky-haired kid snorted, and the two continued avoiding each other's eyes as the train lurched off toward its next destination. Jack did his best not to breathe, trying to balance a desperate need for oxygen against the smell of fruity onions and herring. "This is Baker Street. Change here for connections to the Metropolitan Circle and Jubilee lines. Mind the gap, please." Again, Jack bent down to scan the platform. The walls were covered in rust-covered tiles painted with murals that looked like sketches from an old book. The nearest showed a huge, wolfish dog pouncing on a terrified man. Two other men raced up from the background, both carrying revolvers. One of them wore a bowler hat. Jack almost laughed. The doors opened, and smelly, spiky-haired kid leaned out of the way. Jack shook his head again. He didn't see Sadie. "This train is leaving the station." As the revolving door tube voice made its announcement, the last of the disembarking passengers made their way into a tunnel labeled "Way Out," giving Jack a clear view of the benches. There was Sadie, sitting quietly, hands folded in her lap, as if waiting for the next train. Jack shoved his right hand between the closing doors, winning a shocked look from the smelly, spiky hair kid. It would have felt like a victory if he wasn't about to lose his sister again. "Please step away from the doors," insisted the revolving door tube voice. "I don't think so," grunted Jack, jamming the fingers of his other hand into the crack. He pulled with everything he had. Smelly, spiky hair kid joined in, grunting too, letting out a heavy breath. Jack winced at the smell. The door finally slid open. "Mind the gap, please," said the revolving door tube voice, determined to have the last word. As the doors closed, Jack gave smelly, spiky hair kid a thumbs up through the glass. Smelly, spiky hair kid only snorted and turned away. "I lost him." Sadie looked crestfallen as Jack came running up to the bench. "I lost Daddy. He got off the train and then he was just gone." Jack knelt before his sister, so grateful to be able to take her hand that he wasn't sure he would ever let go again. "It wasn't Dad, Sadie. Maybe we can catch him. He's not far. I can feel it." The hope on his sister's face tore at Jack's heart. He squeezed her hand, trying to get up the courage to say what needed to be said. Even now he couldn't. He hugged her, kissing her forehead. "We're going to be okay, but we have to stick together from now on. Understood?" Sadie nodded, looking up with a smile that told him she didn't understand at all. Jack sighed. "Okay, we need to get out of here." The sign that declared "way out" looked tempting, but the ticket barriers and guards going in meant ticket barriers and guards going out. They couldn't go that way. Then his eyes fell on another gray door marked "Danger, High Voltage." The padlock was missing. Jack pulled it open and found a dark iron staircase that wound its way up through electrical boxes, cables, and rusty pipes. There were bound to be spiders, maybe rats, too. He wasn't sure he wanted to take Sadie into a place like that until he leaned far enough through the door to see the platform at the very top of the staircase where daylight streamed in through a partially open door. Jackpot. Jack winced as he and Sadie stumbled out into the light, back into the noise and chaos of rush hour. He looked up and down the sidewalk, shielding his eyes, searching for a quiet place to figure out how he was going to get his sister back to the hotel. Pedestrians poured out of the station, exit to his left, flooded the sidewalk. To his right, he saw a window display filled with all sorts of knickknacks, a rotary phone, stacks of vinyl records, yellowed sleeves, a top hat with edges so worn that the gray felt showed through the silk. An antique store. Quiet, but Jack had no desire to deal with the crusty old shopkeeper that probably lurked inside. Further up, he saw a grocery. Aisles and anonymity. "Come on," he said, taking Sadie's arm and pulling her along. They didn't get very far. A tall figure in a black overcoat came storming down the sidewalk, heading in the opposite direction. He bumped hard into Jack, spinning him back against the double doors of the antique shop. The man paused and glared down from beneath the shadow of a wide-brimmed fedora. Strangely, he had the same small chin and grizzled aspect as the man in the bowler. The look in his eyes made Jack's blood run cold. "Excuse me," mumbled Jack, and yanked his sister backward through the wooden doors. He kept on backing up until he bumped into the counter. The door swung closed, and the man in the fedora cocked his head, peering through the antiques in the window and staring at the children for a long, uncomfortable second. Then he finally continued on. "You can probably let go of me." Jack glanced down at the iron grip he still maintained on his sister's arm. "Sorry." He let go, flexing his stiff fingers. "You okay?" Sadie massaged her arm and nodded. "Good. We'll just hang out here." Jack's voice trailed off as his eyes shifted from his sister to the long counter behind them. The two of them slowly turned. This was no antique shop. It was some sort of government office, like the Department of Motor Vehicles back in Colorado Springs, except much, much older. Two nicked and dented counters made of dark-stained wood and lined with live evergreen garlands ran the breadth of the entire shop, and an absurdly tall podium jutting between them, its braided lip even with Jack's nose. Faded letters were carved into the faces of the counters. "Lost property" to the left, "Enquiries" to the right, and a great bronze seal hung on the podium, so dark with age it nearly matched the wood. The emblem on the seal showed a falcon in flight, eyes focused. The title imprinted around the edges read, "Lost Property Office, Baker Street Branch."